Good morning. This is the Blaze World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You get more information, listen to previous shows at my website, which is behind me, blainsworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Ruth Wood, owner of Scripting for Success. And she's, as you'll see, an author, playwright, musician, stand-up comedian, artist, a whole bunch of different things. Feel free, Ruth, to wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. Okay, and that is Ruth Wood. Ruth Wood, I guess I've been knowing you for a bunch of years, Ruth, and I was really impressed with, we follow each other on Facebook, and I saw that you were a United States NGO delegate with the World Academy for the Future of Women. As a facilitator and mentor, she empowers university students through their leadership, put their leadership into action with Earth and gender equality and local and global community projects. She serves on the board of Twilight Wish Foundation, dedicated to honoring seniors, making aging more joyful. She's also a seasoned mentor and business consultant, along with being a published author, produced playwright, improv musician, stand-up comic, and artist. And so the question I always ask Ruth, first time I interview somebody on a webcast, is as a child, you grew up where?
Actually, age 6, moved to the same town I'm living in now, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, not too far from where you lived when you lived up north.
Okay, and when you were growing up as a child, growing up in the Doylestown area, did you always know what you wanted to be? I just have to.
Well, it's funny you say that because as early as preschool, I grew up with a mother who was an English major and a father, an engineer. So I was very fascinated by watching Star Trek. And my dad would come home with like um, these rolling tables of like giant computer parts. And early on in my elementary school, I think it was even first grade, I was a robot for Halloween. But I've always had an imagination and I've always been a writer. And I was dubbed Ruth the Poet from a friend of mine pretty early on after I had gotten a poem published in a local magazine. And I had been playing Suzuki violin and piano, Suzuki violin in preschool, and then stopped when we moved to Doylestown when I was 7. And it was like 6 months after I became a big sister of a brother who's a very talented musician. So I've been trying to keep up with my brother, who's very talented as a musician. And after I guess about 30 years, got back to playing music through harmonica and violin. So I've always been interested in like having creative outlets and doing art and teaching creativity and things like that. So
Yeah, it seems like you've been interested in lots of cool things, which is
yeah.
kind of fun. You mentioned you wrote the first poem. How old were you when you wrote that poem?
I mean, not more than first or second grade.
Do you still have the poem?
I'm sure we could dredge up an issue.
No, that'd be really cool to find the first poem or frame it behind you.
Mhm.
And then also you mentioned the poetry. So do you still write poetry?
I do in different forms.
Okay.
I something that I'm currently writing more often is taking anything that's bothering me for the day or my goals, intentions, things that I want to manifest, if you will. And I flip anything that's causing me stress to something more positive, and then I turn it into a short story. And not only do I do that for myself, but I've done it for charity founders and startup companies and sales managers and people like that who have these big lofty goals, or they just want to be more influential around the people around them to be as motivated as they are.
I love what you're saying, and that reminds me of a friend of mine, Ruth, had a similar kind of idea, and he would write mysteries. But what he would
Mm.
do is people would piss him off, he would kill them in the mystery. So if
Wow.
it annoys you, that's one way to deal with your stress and frustration, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, turn it almost into a comedy or a mystery. That's pretty interesting.
But especially that I always remember that to kill him. So I was just glad I was never in one of his books because I don't know that
Dodged a
if that's
bullet, literally.
The kiss of death. And by the way, I have to stop you a second before we go any further. And I'm kind of admiring off the air. Some of the stuff behind you is really cool. Did you do that or somebody else do the artwork?
So I'm in my husband's office right now because I was just leaving the library and doing our local Doylestown Free Library has Monday night chess, so I get to play with 8-year-olds that kick my butt and retired people that kick my butt, but I'm getting better. And so then I decided to set up shop here where my husband's got all his original art up. So we got local wildlife, we got well, the bathroom. We got the bathroom over there. We got some painting or what looks like paintings, but they're photos.
And then the pillows he did also?
Photos, um, a deer. Yeah, but he's got a lot of cool art.
Okay. And I told you too, and if Jason, if you're listening, I want to get you on the show one time, just talk about your art as well. But you mentioned your husband. Do you do art as well?
Oh, yes. And we've actually had a show together where his nature scenes are printed on photographs on these type of things and also on clothing. And he's gotten into fashion and photography art on his clothes. And then I have paintings and art that actually is on a website that you can print either in various forms, like a shower curtain or art or a handbag or
Very
your
cool.
CD
And
case cover. So it's a lot of fun.
I like what you called it. Some of my favorite things. You mentioned people can see that or access those favorite things of yours and get them printed. How do they find that?
Yeah, they can let's see, they can go to pixel pixels.com and search for Ruth Ann Wood.
Okay, very cool. Way to track you down. And talking about tracking you down, let's kind of fast forward that a little bit to the fact that I know you have, I guess, your own company. I love the name for it, Scripting for Success. And what's the idea behind Scripting for Success?
Well, the idea started out actually as a theater exercise that I did when I was 22, and I just had my 50th birthday this month or last month. Um, so I've had this idea for a long time and helped people for a while now, where since I'm a lover of short stories, I realized that a lot of my short stories had sort of a prophetic quality to it. You know how people say the Simpsons can predict the future? Well, I think any storyteller can write things, and if they give it a lot enough time and attention, it starts to show up in their conversations and their opportunities and their interactions with others. So I turned that into a business.
And so, has that happened in your life? Have you written stuff down?
Yes, as early as some of the things that I wrote in grade school, from traveling the world to being around space stuff. I got to sit in the same cockpit pit that John Glenn and Buzz Aldrin did their centrifuge training right in my local backyard. Um,
And so
I
you written that down at one time and it became a
I wrote
reality?
that I wanted to be the first kid in space.
Okay.
And then when I was like in fifth grade, I wanted to be the first pregnant lady in space. But to this date, I don't have any children, so
Okay. Didn't
that
quite
didn't
make that
count.
one. But did you also, I have to ask you then, of course, when you're in elementary school, did you also write that you wanted to be on the Plains World webcast? And sure enough, here you are.
I wrote that I was a writer and that I loved people. And I had this book in elementary school that was a Dr. Seuss book where I would interview all these different people. So I've always been an interviewer. I've had my own podcast where I interviewed over 160 people on peace, passion, and prosperity called Live Your Peace. So I love hearing people's stories. I love helping people shape their stories. And since I have a background, my first career out of not even out of high school, I started studying acupressure and Oriental medicine. And I found a way to combine my love of storytelling using words instead of acupressure points to shift the way people's energy directs their life.
Very cool. And so that's what you do with Scripting for Success?
Yeah.
And so are these courses or one-on-one work with you? How do they?
It's been one-on-one, it's been group work, it's been online courses, it's been ebooks. And anyone that reaches out to me from this podcast, I can send them some samples of things that we could work on together or collaborate on.
And talk a little bit about that. So if people are interested in that option of your life, Ruth, and the thing that knocks my socks off about you is there are so many different aspects, of your life. I don't know
It's
how to.
all under the same umbrella of making decisions about what I want to do and then realizing, okay, what it is that I want to do and make a plan around it and then do it in a way that bypasses the inner critic that says, oh, well, I've never produced a play before. I've never published a book before. I've never traveled outside the country before. And then writing a story about it and then getting the inspiration and the guidance and the opportunities that follow it. And it actually gives me and my clients more confidence around that.
It's almost, you reminded me of the book that was bestseller many years ago, The Secret. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm hearing you say you kind of write it down or think about it, and it can
You
help
definitely got to
you.
write it down because when it shows up, people like even me tend to overlook it or think it's a coincidence and don't act on it. But if a lot of things that we're talking about, if I hadn't written it down, I wouldn't have pursued it
So
because
talk
I've
about
been
scripting for
too
success.
distracted or I would be like, oh, well, that's great, but it wouldn't really support how much I really wanted to do it. But taking the time to do the story helps me realize, okay, this is important to me.
And to actually write it down is the real key. And so talk about then back to scripting for success. If folks want to find out more about that or contact you through scripting for success, how do they do that?
They can go to Ruth at scripting, SCRIPTING FOR success.com.
Okay. And they'll find out examples of work you do with people and how you can help them in that
Sure.
regard as well.
Sure.
Now, what's I was getting a kick out of speaking with you, Ruth, because almost all the time I'll find out something more about you or learn something new about you. And so,
I feel the same way about you, Blaine.
okay, well, no, but it's really cool because I know we've been sort of friends, Facebook friends, acquaintances, we've known each other for a bunch of years, but all of a sudden I'm tracking you down, and then I see too, now you're in New York City at a United Nations conference of some sort. And that's just
Yes,
kind
the
of,
annual Women's Caucus, and it's been going on for around 69 years. And it brings these amazing women and men, but mostly women from all around the world that want to network and be up to date on the current needs of our planet and
well,
then
so,
share resources.
what's so cool about that, I had never heard about it before. Then I wrote you and we've been back and forth on it. But I love the title to it, The World Academy for the Future of Women. And there was an actual conference there and you were a delegate to that.
So we're part of Global Interactions, which has put on a curriculum called World Academy for the Future of Women. Um, and it's helped over 2,000 alumni get better jobs, but more importantly, put the United Nations sustainability goals into action in their local and global community. So everything from having conversations about gender equality and having a voice and a choice rather than just and we go to places that don't necessarily get access to leadership for women, places like in Asia um, and places that the typical story is you are born as a woman, you listen to your father, and then you get married and you listen to your husband, and then you listen to your son. And so, if we're ever going to make any changes in our health of our humanity, empowering women to have a voice and a choice and go beyond their personal and geographic boundaries, which is part of our code of ethics. This is what we did our talk on. We did a talk on how people could become facilitators and mentors and go to different parts of the world and facilitate for a month in these different universities that we partner with.
So how many people were at this conference?
And from our group, there was 15 delegates, and over the course of 2 weeks, there was probably, I would say, maybe 20,000 participants.
So you mentioned what you mentioned your group. What was your group?
The World Academy for the Future of Women,
Okay.
the
And
one that partners with universities around the world to teach or action, put leadership into action.
how'd you get involved in that?
So it's funny. Back in 2003, I wrote my first uh, co-authored book after um, trying to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up. And out of that book, it was sort of a chicken soup for the soul book with about 25 co-authors. And I asked everyone to send me essays and what they were passionate about. And out of that, one of the essays that really moved me was by a man who was born a twin, is still a twin. And I was born a twin, but she died when we were babies. And we ended up co-authoring a book about his experience um, being a world-class figure skater. He skated with local and world-class figure skaters. Like he has a section in Dorothy Hamill's book,
Wow.
My Life So Far, or my story, or something like that, which he references how this blind figure skater, influenced her. Um, and he's a local in my area, and I ended up co-authoring a book with him back in 2007 called "You Can't Get It Because You've Already Got It: A Blind Figure Skater and a Visionary Writer's Inspirational Guide to Moving Through Life." And there was a woman that interviewed us on the author show. It was her way of interviewing people. And fast forward almost 10 years, and I opened up one of her emails, and she said she was involved in this program called the World Academy for the Future Woman, a bold and daring leadership program. So I was fascinated because it said, even if you're really busy in your life, um, you can't miss this opportunity of being transformed by these students who are putting these leadership goals in action, and you get to be a facilitator and help with their community outreach, their weekly labs, and I basically became a university facilitator for like 5 weeks. That was pretty cool.
So back to the book where you mentioned this other person. Is that person still around?
Yeah, Stosh Serafin is still skating and he's in his 70s.
Okay. Again, I'll put the onus on you, but add that
I'm writing
to
his name down right here. I got a list of all these
you,
people
you
to interview.
telling, and you've always told great stories, Ruth. So you tell me the story. I want to speak to this person. That sounds like it'd be a great person to speak with.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing that. So you became involved in this group, and you're still involved in it. Is that correct?
Yeah. So during a little around 2020, we got consultative status with the United Nations. That means we can attend these special events, get special grounds passes, and um, hear all these world leaders speak in this conference at the United Nations, and network with all these other delegates.
So that
So
must have been pretty impressive. Where I saw it on Facebook that you had been a delegate there, and that was a 2 week conference you were there.
I was there only a week because New York hotels are very expensive and it's
I,
all out of our pockets.
I was going to say so, but still, that must have been some week for you, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it was the second time I did it. I did it 2 years ago. Was going to do it last year, but ended up going to a wedding in India.
Close enough. Yeah, I remember pictures of that wedding and you and Jason, right? I saw pictures of you.
Yeah, it was the fourth time we've been to India. So
What's your
we
love? Do you have a particular love of
we have
India?
a family that we kind of fell in love with, and we keep on visiting them in Calcutta.
Okay, very cool. Do they come here?
No, but the aunt lives like within half hour from my house. And we met this one person, her nephew, and kind of adopted him because he's so charismatic. And then visited his family and found out the rest of the family was very cool.
I have to ask you a question, Ruth. Just listening to you is kind of knocking my socks off here. Do you ever sleep?
Are you wearing any socks? Because I knocked them off 5 minutes ago.
No, but I'm wondering, do you ever sleep in terms of
Oh
all
yeah,
the
sure.
different things you do? We don't sleep much.
I get enough sleep.
Yeah, I wonder because the other thing you were telling me off the air, and I heard about this, but you want to set me up with a show with them too. Another magnificent group you're involved in, and I think you're on the board of the
Yes.
Twilight Wish Foundation. What's
Yes.
that?
It's been around for 21 years. It started locally in the Doylestown, Bucks County area, but it's a national organization that has one of the highest ratings on Star Navigator, which is a good way to pick out charities. And it was started for like one woman at a kitchen table for $711. And it has grown to, and she's probably given over $4 or $5 million of her own time and energy, but she's now got a board of director and a whole staff, and we've granted wishes for seniors that um, may be neglected, have to be at a lower income level, but we help them grant their wishes that are nominated by someone else. And it's anything from a simple need wish like um, eyeglasses to hearing aids to we did a recent eyeball replacement to getting to meet the Pope for a guy that had a challenging story. One of our most viral wishes was this woman in her 90s wanted to pet a penguin, like the animal. So that was pretty interesting. We had one woman, Rosie the Riveter, which I wish she'd be a great guest. Unfortunately, she passed on in her late 90s in the last couple weeks. May Cryer, but she became the voice of Rosie the Riveter and actually helped get Rosie the Riveter Day and um, Senior Month passed in Pennsylvania with the help of Twilight Wish.
So now this group is just for seniors for the most part.
Yeah, you have to be like 67 or we have different requirements, sometimes with a little wiggle room around that.
Very cool. And
You don't have to be dying, you just have to be unable to make the wish come true yourself and be nominated because you've done maybe some community service or a good person. We don't
oh, it's
just,
open to both men and women.
yes.
Geographically, it's throughout the nation or just in Pennsylvania?
We have chapters all over the country. And
Okay.
we're always looking for donors and sponsors and corporate sponsors that really want more goodwill and great media in partnering with Twilight Wish.
And so that particular group, Ruth, I keep asking you for how to find out information. How do
It's
people find out about
twilightwish.org.
pilotwish.org? And you've been involved in that for how long now?
Well, probably since it started in like 2003, I helped with some publishing wishes, helping seniors get their books self-published. And then I became a WOW member, one of the founding members, to, I guess, raise more funds and awareness for Twilight Wish. And then I became a board member. I'm serving my third 2-year term, which just is about to start.
Very exciting. So that one mentioned they can go to the website, get information. Does the website tell them if they want to submit a wish, they tell them how to do that as well?
Yes, it's all on the front page. And we have a charity event, our annual event coming up called WOW, Week of Wishes. And they can still get tickets and and we can or sponsor a wish. So
And do you have in front of you, or do you know offhand where and when that's happening?
I think it's this Thursday coming up.
Okay, and best bet to get information on that, just go to the website.
Yeah, yeah, it's right there.
Okay. And so I'm listening to all this, just some of the stuff you do. I also know you in the context of being, we'll call either a stand-up comedian or an aspiring stand-up comedian.
I'm more of an aspiring one. I did produce a couple character play for the Philadelphia Live Fringe Festival.
Really? When was that?
That was this, actually I became a published author the same day I became a produced playwright when I published You Can't Get It because you already got it on Amazon which needs to be updated. So we're not selling copies right now, but and then I put on a play, um, 15 shows in 3 weekends, which is if anyone's ever done a school play, the max is like 3 plays or
Right, exactly.
4 plays. So, but it was a comedy about my career of doing massage for at least 10 years, and now I've done it for over 25 years. So.
So that you actually wrote a play about this?
Yeah, so what I did was I thought of all the scenarios in my life of the challenges of marketing, massage therapy, holistic health, stuff like that, therapeutic massage. And then we just made jokes about all of it and we even got a nod from the Philadelphia City paper because we made a joke about how we couldn't advertise in there because there was different kinds of massages there. And then we had this very charismatic woman that was like the Jill of all traits in our play. She was like the hostess. She was like the vivacious massage client that had never been massaged by a male massage therapist. So we tackled all the taboo topics, and it turned into a really funny piece. And then we ended the show with a comedy of someone with like really bad arthritis and how massage helped her.
Talk about the fact that you've also done on your own some stand-up separate from that, right?
Yeah, just around town. Yep.
And you mentioned too, I think that you're doing some now lately, or you're doing some with some other folks involved. You were telling me with some musicians or something.
Oh well, it's more improv than stand up. Um, so I participate in at least 3 open mics that are happening throughout the week. Um, they just opened up open mic night, which I love. It's like a jam session, so you don't have to wait for your name to be called on the list. You can immediately jam with all these amazing musicians at Puck around 7 o'clock on a Sunday night. And then Tuesday night at Mom's or Maxwell's on Main in Doylestown. Great musicians there. And then Thursday back at Puck. And also, I've actually sat in and played harmonica with some hardcore blues players at Villa Capri in Doylestown. So,
How do you learn how to play
so
the
right the summer of 2020, I picked up a $6 plastic harmonica and started playing it in my seat at different restaurants when there were performers to the point where I annoyed them enough that they said, "Come on up and play." And then I got a larger arrangement of harmonicas, and now I can play with just about any musician as long as I know what key it's in.
Okay. And did you study this at all, or did you learn it on
So I have a
YouTube?
background in preschool in Suzuki violin and elementary school in piano, and I have a piano collecting dust in my living room that I haven't really played. And then I re-picked up the violin like in the last couple of years, around the time I picked up the harmonica.
So let me ask you this, Ruth. It seems we should just make a list sometime, or this would be a good skit as well. All the different things you've done in your life, you know.
Well, a lot of that energy would have been dedicated to the creativity and act extracurricular activities of children, but I don't have any.
No, but it seems like forgetting not having children,
So
it
I'm
seems,
taking care of my inner child.
no, but it seems it. But I mean, I don't know if you ever counted, but it'd be an interesting experience to count how many different things you've done in your life.
And it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to my friend who's, young enough to be my kid, and he said, "Wow, I can't believe all the things that you've done in your life, Ruth."
Well, me either. And just if we have a record of this, but let me ask you, it segues into the next question I wanted to ask you. So you've done all these things in the past. Do you have any goals for yourself or in terms of moving ahead? Do you see yourself doing any new things in the years to come?
Well, my husband's a little jealous of me because I spent all this time with a green bird. This app called Duolingo, for the last 5 years, I've been learning Spanish. And so on Facebook in the last couple days, I made it a goal that I would push myself even more to speak Spanish better. So that's one of my goals. And I want
So,
to travel. I've been to 25 countries, but none of
well,
them really were Spanish speaking. So I want to go to, I've been to like uh, Europe and Asia, but I want to go to Latin America and South America, and I think my Spanish will come in handy there.
Does Jason speak Spanish?
Very little.
Okay, but so you'll have to be the key person in that process. But that's cool. Now, you're learning that just through an app? You're learning Spanish?
Yeah, it's called Duolingo.
I've heard of it, yeah. And does it work?
I mean, I I think it's really good for learning vocab and spelling and hearing native speakers. What's also helping me is the Doylestown Library have a monthly Spanish group, and then out of that, we created a weekly group with a couple of friends, and just sitting at a friend's kitchen table and chatting for about an hour has probably helped me more than any app has helped me.
Now, have you actually gotten to use your Spanish anywhere?
Um, just in the drive-in through of Taco Bell. No, I haven't really been too many places that use it.
Okay, but you're getting confident that you could do this?
I'm getting confident that I can continue learning, yes.
And you also mentioned too that you've been to pretty impressive 25 countries, you said?
Around that many, yep.
Yeah. And so I'll ask you both ways. So is that your goal to go to more countries?
Well, my grandmother was the first person that took me to, well, I went to Jamaica when I was 4 and then Indonesia after high school when I was 19. And that really planted the seeds of wanting to travel more.
Also, some people have the same kind of goal in terms of states in this country. How many
Yeah,
states
I've been to half of them.
have you?
I haven't been to Alaska. I haven't been to some of the middle states.
So is that
And
on your bucket list to get to more
I guess
states in
so.
there?
That would be fun. One of the things that my husband Jason and I have joked about was he's an avid cyclist.
Right.
Was I'd be the sag wagon and he would ride and we would go from um, Canada when it was warm down to the middle of United States, down into Mexico when it got colder. But that was something that we haven't done yet.
Keep that in mind though, because it reminds me of friends of mine, Ruth, same kind of thing. They toured their entertainers. They toured all 50 states,
Nice.
and they performed in all 50 states. And the guy part of it, he just wrote a book on that, pictures and stuff like that. So that could be another
That sounds
project
fun.
in your spare time. You could document all this and record all the stuff you're doing in every state or every country out there. Certainly a lot. Bucket
Yeah.
list. Do you have anything you want to do down the road?
Bucket list. Well, one of my major procrastinations, and I was talking to my friend earlier today. Um, I've pitched a screenplay to a couple producers. They said, sure, send it. And I never did. And that was 10 and 20 years ago. But it's my story that kind of is my story in code about the age reversing grandmother that gets younger and younger doing all these interesting things.
Okay, sounds like it'd be kind of an interesting thing to do. And I guess a final question I'll ask you, Ruth. If anybody's watching this or listening to this, we've talked about they can contact you for scripting for success. You can find out more about Twilight, the Wish Foundation, really neat organization.
And the World Academy for the Future of Women.
Okay, th three so far. What do you tell people in general if they come to you and they are interested in pursuing their dreams? I guess
Yeah.
it's a two-part question. Number one, what if they don't know their dreams, or how do you deal with that kind of person?
It's no, I tend to gravitate towards people that are very accomplished and feel all this life and vitality and don't have enough hours in the day. And so yeah, be around those people more and you'll get inspired.
Good point. It reminds me of the same thing too. When my daughter was younger, Ruth, I could never understand that. She would sometimes say she was bored. And I'd say to her, how can you be bored? I'll ask you the same question. And I think I probably know the answer. Have you ever been bored?
Well, I've been told that someone was bored and I said, well, then I'm plywood.
Great line, but isn't it true though? Yeah, how can you be bored? It seems like The
I mean,
problem,
you can totally do your own thing, or you could check out and watch the multitude of things on social media or on all these streaming services. So, I mean, you might be overwhelmed, but bored? I don't think so.
Ruth Wood, if anybody wants to get in touch with you to find out about any of the many things you've talked about, what's the best bet?
Well, they could message me on Facebook at Ruth Ann Wood, or they could email me at Ruth Ann with an E Wood at gmail.com.
Okay. And I'm trying to think. So you're on Facebook. Do you have a website?
I do scripting for success, like writing a success script,
Great
scripting for
idea.
success
Anyway,
stuff.
I'd like to thank you for being my guest, Ruth, with this Blaine's World edition of Blaine's World. I was surprised you told me off the air. We hadn't had you on our show before, but hopefully this will be the first of many, so thank you for being my guest. I'd also like to thank
Yeah,
my producer, Cappy Tassetti, and let's plan together as we do every so often. Next time I'm in the Bucks County area, we'll try to bump into each other, either a comedy show or some other thing we bumped
that'd
into
be
each other
fun.
at. Or next time you come down to Asheville, North Carolina, I'd love to have you.
I'd love that. Thank you for the invitation.
Have you ever been to Asheville?
I have not.
Okay, well, we'll add this to one of the places you'll have to get to. Ruth, this was great. Thanks a lot. Speak to you soon. Thanks, Cappy, and we'll look forward to meeting in live time sometime soon. Thanks, Ruth.
Thanks, Blaine.
Jason, see you.